Parliament Hill Lido opens at 7 in the morning, every day of the year. In the winter, the water sits at 4 or 5 degrees, and the swimmers who come in the dark are a particular kind of person. The regulars, the committed, people who have decided that cold is something the body learns to accept. In summer, the water climbs to the low 20s and the pool fills. On the right kind of day, in July, it fills completely, and the sound of it carries across the heath. The Lido has been there since 1938. Art Deco concrete, 60 metres by 27, unheated and open to the sky. The largest outdoor pool in London. It has outlasted everything built around it, the politics, the borough boundary changes, the Greater London Council, the ownership transfers, the arguments about who it belongs to and who gets to use it. However, it is still there, and it opens at 7. In the summer of 1976, the water was free. That summer is one the country still reaches for when it wants to describe heat. Not because it was the hottest summer on record, it wasn't, not anymore, but because of what it did to the landscape of a country that had no framework for it. The grass went yellow in May and stayed yellow until September. Rivers ran dry, parts of the southwest went 45 days without rain. For the UK, anyone who knows the UK knows that's a long time. The government appointed a minister for drought. Reservoirs fell so low that villages drowned decades earlier came back to the surface. The ladybirds came in billions, swarming the southern coasts. People remember it the way they remember a fever, not as fact, but as a sensation. The specific smell of the dry earth in a country built for rain. At Heathrow, the temperature stayed above 30 degrees Celsius for 16 consecutive days. The sequence ended on the 8th of July. On the 8th of July 1976, Parliament Hill Lido was full. Later estimates put the number of people around the pool between 800 and 1,000. The pool was free, the heath was open, and it was the kind of afternoon that pulls city outdoors, whether it means to go or not. School-aged children, mostly around 400 of them, said to have played truant that day. At 2:30 in the afternoon, a lifeguard was alerted that a boy was unresponsive in the water. That boy, his name was Enrico Sidoli, and he was 15 years old. The Sidoli family had been in North London long enough that it was simply home. Antonio had grown up in Italy and come to England the way many Italians of his generation came, drawn by work, held by life. By 1976, he had a family, a trade, a neighbourhood. He worked in restaurants, he drove a van. He was proud of where they had come from and deliberate about keeping it present. Day trips to Roman sites in and around London, the Italian heritage worn without apology, in a part of the city that had been receiving Italians for over a century. The community the Sidolis belonged to was not a recent arrival. It was settled, generational, thinning slightly as the post-war wave began its return migration, but they were not guests, they were North Londoners. Louise, his wife, was the kind of person a household organises itself around without quite knowing it's doing so. Her son Enrico, she said, could never be out-talked. She said it with particular mixture of exasperation and pride that belongs to mothers of verbose children. She knew exactly who he was. She also said that she never wanted to let him out of the house because of the bullies. Enrico was 15. He had a neck injury that caused an involuntary tic, his head moving side to side. a thing his body did without its permission. And the boys at school had noticed it, and they had given him the nickname that children give when they want to diminish something they don't understand: Noddy. He talked constantly about music, about the fantasy life that he was building, in which he was a DJ. He attended a special needs school in an era when the language around such children was unkind, and the provision was often worse. He was gentle and musically gifted, and regularly bullied. By every account that survives, someone his family loved without reservation. He was named after Enrico Caruso, the Voice, the most celebrated Italian tenor of the 20th century, a man whose recordings cross time. Antonio Sidoli named his son after a voice that outlasted everything. It is the kind of thing a father does when he has decided that his child will be something. Enrico couldn't swim. His sister Iolanda was 13 that summer. His sister Elizabeth was older, already with children of her own. On the 8th of July, Enrico went to Parliament Hill Lido with Elizabeth and her children. It was the kind of a family afternoon that doesn't announce itself as anything: a hot day, a free pool, the heath 10 minutes walk from home. The kind of afternoon that is simply what a Thursday in July looks like when the summer is long and this still. They went to the pool. Neither Elizabeth nor the children witnessed what happened next. Sometime around 2:30 in the afternoon, Enrico became entangled in a confrontation with a group of older youths near the deep end of the pool. What followed happened in public, in daylight, in front of hundreds of people. The witnesses, who eventually spoke, described a sequence: an argument of some kind, punches thrown, and Enrico struck and sent into the deep end beside the water slide. Two of the boys jumping in after him, not to help. They held him under. They let him up, briefly, gasping. They pushed him down again. One of them, the account suggests, attempted to pull him back to the surface when the reality of what happened became clear. However, it was too late. Enrico sank to the bottom of the 10-foot pool. He couldn't swim. A 12-year-old boy who had been diving to the bottom of the pool to retrieve tin cans found him there, doubled over, clutching his stomach, motionless. The boy hauled him halfway to the surface. However, due to the age difference and weight difference, it was too much. He had to let go. So a young girl spotted this, and she saw Enrico's body in the water and ran to alert the lifeguard. Michael Pierce, the lifeguard on duty, dived in and dragged Enrico to the side. His heart had already stopped. Two nurses from the Royal Free Hospital happened to be at the pool that afternoon, finishing a shift. They worked him in at the poolside for 20 minutes, mouth to mouth, desperate and sustained, while hundreds of people gathered around them in growing horror. I have heard accounts that one of the nurses at some point during or after those 20 minutes of trying to save Enrico's life discovered that her handbag had been stolen. A photograph was taken in those minutes. Someone had a camera. This was July 1976, not the age of phones, not the age of everything being recorded, and they used it. The photograph captures the resuscitation at the poolside. In the background, around just over 100 onlookers are visible, and police would eventually trace most of them, but around 30 remain unaccounted for to this day. In the water behind the crowd, a dark-haired man is swimming away from the side where Enrico lies. He is the only person in the frame moving away from the scene. He has never been identified. Enrico was rushed to the Royal Free Hospital in Hampstead. His brain had been deprived of oxygen for several critical minutes. The damage was catastrophic, and from the outset the prognosis was grim. In a brief moment of consciousness, apparently he managed to convey something to the detectives who came to his bedside. He had been kicked and punched, and he had been held under the water. He gave what he could. Then he slipped back under. Enrico died on the 19th of July, 11 days after the afternoon at the pool. The cause of death, irreversible brain damage caused by cardiac arrest. His funeral was held on the 3rd of August 1976 at Hampstead Cemetery. Over 200 mourners attended. Among the floral tributes was a teddy bear made from white chrysanthemums, accounts suggest, sent by the children at his school. There was also a wreath from Scotland Yard, according to witnesses that day. Scotland Yard had sent flowers to the funeral of a boy they had not yet found justice for. They would, over the years, send detectives as well. Eventually, decades of them. It would not be enough. Between 800 and 1,000 people. That number has been in public record since 1976, and it has never stopped being the thing the case turns on. It's not the attack, not the investigation, and not even the death of poor Enrico. The number, a crowd on a Thursday afternoon in July and afterwards, when the police began asking everyone what they had seen. The answer came back slowly, incompletely, and from every direction. Always the same, always nothing. Try to hold it as a physical fact. 1,000 people is a small concert. It is a large church. It's not an abstraction. 1,000 people there that day. All kinds of people, adults, children. Yes, there was everything happening. Yes, it was an afternoon where no one was really paying attention to anyone. They was just trying to have fun. Children shouting, water splashing. All the particular acoustics of concrete and open sky. Somewhere inside that specific noise, though, a 15-year-old boy was beaten and held underwater. And the noise continued. The coroner's inquest opened in January 1977. A handful of young witnesses gave evidence. Their testimony is in the public record, and it is worth sitting with. A 13-year-old girl described the boy pushed under and come up once before being pushed down again. They were just laughing, she said. She thought it was a joke. Another witness, also 13, was close enough to see the sequential detail, the argument, the hit, the fall. The two boys in the water taking turns holding Enrico under, coming up for air, one at a time, while he fought to reach the surface. He did once, she said, and they pushed him under again. Then he did not come back to the surface. Then she said this: I went off to see a friend. She was 13 years old, and she had just described with precision and clarity watching a boy being drowned. And then she went to see a friend. This is not condemnation. She was a child. What she did, the going, the not acting, the return to ordinary afternoon, is one of the things the case keeps asking us to hold without resolving. Whether the failure was hers or the crowd's, or something structural about what it means to witness an act of violence inside the noise of 1,000 people who are mostly just trying to keep cool on a hot day. The police understood quickly that the silence was not simply indifference, it was fear. Specific, local, named fear. Detective Chief Inspector Clement, leading the initial investigation, installed a special answering machine in the incident room so that members of the public could ring in anonymously without speaking to an officer directly. What soon became apparent was people at the Lido had been too afraid to speak. Not because they didn't know anything, because they knew exactly what happened to people who talked. The streets of the 1970s Kentish town were not abstract. The gangs were not abstract. The bottles and the knives were not abstract. In one instance, the police located a young witness who had likely seen the murder. Their parents took them on holiday immediately, specifically to avoid detectives. DCI Clement, speaking publicly in 1976, accused the parents of Kentish Town of instructing their children to stay silent. He called their silence wicked. He was a detective who had just watched a 15-year-old boy's killers walk free into the summer. The word is understandable. Whether it is fair is a different question, and one the case does not answer cleanly. There is a version of this story that explains the silence structurally. A crowd is not a community. The bystander effect, the documented psychological phenomenon by which presence of others reduces any individual's likelihood of intervening. It's well evidenced. In a crowd of that size, with the chaos of water, noise and children, and the ordinary horseplay of a Lido on the hottest day in living memory, it is possible that no single person had a clear enough view to know what they were seeing was a boy being killed rather than a boy being roughly handled. The psychology is real. The explanation is available. And yet, the World in Action documentary aired on the 4th of July 1977, almost exactly a year after Enrico died. It was called The Very Public Death of Enrico Sidoli. Made by Granada Television, broadcast on ITV, it asked in a way that World in Action asked things, directly and without softening. What it meant that this had happened in public, whether the silence of a crowd was the silence of people who generally hadn't seen, or the silence of people who had seen and decided for whatever reason that seeing was not the same as speaking. The documentary is not available, sadly. It sits in an archive. The police in 2018 said publicly that they would like to see additional footage from the shoot. Material the crew filmed that didn't make the final cut. The film sparked what contemporary accounts describe as a national debate about how much people cared about others. That debate has produced no new witnesses. The wall of silence that went up across North London in July 1976 held through the broadcast and held through every appeal that followed. Here is what the case keeps arriving at, no matter which direction you approach it from. The people who were at Parliament Hill Lido on the 8th of July 1976 are not abstractions. They were not children that afternoon, 11, 12, 13, 14 and 15 years old, the same age as Enrico. They are now in their 60s and 70s. They have lived their entire lives in the years since that Thursday. Marriages, children, grandchildren, losses of their own, the ordinary accumulation of a human life across 5 decades. Somewhere inside those lives is a Thursday afternoon in July when they were young and the summer was very hot and something happened in the water near them, and they either saw it clearly or they saw it partially, or they heard something and turned away. They know which one it is. The silence is a choice that has been renewed, actively or passively, every day for 49 years. Every morning that someone who was at that Lido on the 8th of July woke up and did not pick up the phone is a morning of the silence continued. Every summer, every time the heat wave of 1976 comes up in conversation, the summer before everything changed, the summer the ground cracked, and they nodded along and said nothing. The wall does not hold itself up. Walls require maintenance. The investigation moved fast in the weeks after Enrico died. By the 11th of August, the Evening News had offered a £1,000 reward for information. By the 17th of August, police had released a detailed photo fit of one of the youths they wanted to speak to. Dark eyes, possibly of Spanish, Greek or Italian origin. 17 or 18, 5'8" and denim clothes. Bay City roller style, black trousers, an earring, hair parted and feathered. A possible defect in one eye. DCI Clement described him publicly as a swaggering bully, known to the area for intimidating and beating up old women and children. 5 female pupils at a Kentish town school were said to know the trio well. They refused to name them. On the same day the photo fit was released, something else happened. A boy rang the incident room answering machine. He was described as Greek and he was weeping. He said, "I didn't mean to do it." He left other details on the message, specific enough that detectives believed that he was genuine and directly involved. They went to the media immediately, appealing for him to call back. He never did. The investigation widened. On the 21st of August, the murder squad detectives attended an Arsenal match at Highbury, approaching fans known as the Highbury mob. Not as suspects, but as people who would know things. The following day, a civilian overheard 2 boys discussing the murder in public and frog-marched them to Kentish Town Police Station. Under pressure, the boys gave names. Those names, police would confirm, matched names already coming in from approximately 1,000 calls made by members of the public seeking a reward. Police now had names. Proving guilt was another matter. On the 24th of September 1976, a 16-year-old youth was arrested on suspicion of murder. He was held for 3 days at Kentish Town Police Station. During 4 separate interviews, he gave conflicting accounts, and then in one of those interviews, he confessed. "I did it. I didn't mean to hurt the boy. It was an accident. I was pretending to push people, but not actually doing it. I pretended to push him, but he lost his balance, and we both fell, and we were struggling to get to the surface. He held a hold of my arm and wouldn't let go, and we were struggling, but he slowly let go of the grip and slid to the bottom. I got scared, got out and got dressed." This account drifted considerably from the witness testimony at the inquest, where the witness had described a deliberate sustained assault, a boy struck, thrown in, held down, coming up for air, pushed under again. 3 witnesses then failed to pick the suspect out of an identity parade. On the basis of that failure, the boy rescinded his confession. The Director of Public Prosecutions declined to proceed with the charges. At the coroner's inquest in January 1977, DCI Clement testified to all of this. The jury returned a verdict of manslaughter by persons unnamed. The foreman told the court, "We cannot name any names because we do not know any." After hearing, Antonio Sidoli spoke to the press. He said, "I shall not be satisfied until the killer is caught, tried and prosecuted." He added that there were witnesses the police had not called. In 1986, the case was reopened after fresh information came in. Over the following months, detectives questioned 8 men, including a British soldier in his 20s, then stationed in West Germany, believed to have been present at the Lido that day. A file of evidence was compiled and submitted to the Director of Public Prosecutions. On the 30th of November 1986, the DPP decided no further action should be taken. He cited the passage of time and insufficient evidence. 8 men questioned, no charges. The passage of time and insufficient evidence. In 2017, the Metropolitan Police launched a cold case review. They released an enhanced section of the 1976 photograph, the image taken at the poolside during the resuscitation, the one that captured the over 100 onlookers in the background. The enhanced section showed the dark-haired man in the pool, moving away from the side where Enrico lay. Police said they believed his first name might be Tony. He was probably a teenager that day, and that would make him in his mid-50s to mid-60s now. They wanted to speak to him, not necessarily as a suspect, but as someone who was there, who was close, who may have been something that was not yet being said. He has not come forward. Iolanda Sidoli, speaking to the Camden New Journal that year, said this about the man in the photograph: "He has never been traced or spoken to by police, and we would be very interested to talk to him about what he saw that day. Not what he did, what he saw." The Metropolitan Police's £20,000 reward offered as part of that 2017 appeal has since lapsed. The family's matching offer, their own £20,000 reward, committed separately, is reportedly to remain in place. The Camden New Journal coverage in 2016, a local newspaper doing what local newspapers exist to do, was what brought the family and the cold case detectives back together after years of quiet. The most significant development in this case in recent decades came not from a national investigation, but from a North London community newspaper covering its own patch. The case lives where it's always lived, in the neighbourhood, in the community, in the specific geography of Kentish Town and Parliament Hill, and the heath that connects them. The case is still open. Anyone with information can contact the Metropolitan Police's specific case investigation team. The number is in the description, and there is also a website. I believe the family's reward still remains. Iolanda Sidoli was 13 years old on the 8th of July 1976. She is in her 60s now. She has lived more than 50 years with the specific weight of knowing exactly how her brother died and not knowing who was responsible. She has given interviews, she has met with detectives, she has marked anniversaries in public when making them privately was not enough to keep the case alive. The pain, she has said, has never gone. Not diminished, not settled, never gone. She was 13. She was a child whose heart was broken in a way from which she has never fully recovered. She remembered crying uncontrollably when Enrico died. She said, "We all died." This is what an unsolved case does to people. at its centre. It holds the grief open. Every year without an answer is a year in which the question is still pressing on the wound. The grief and the not knowing are the same thing, inseparable, and neither resolves without the other. Antonio Sidoli died without an answer. Louise Sidoli, who had spent the years after 1976 at Enrico's grave, who had visited the Lido on anniversaries to drop a flower into the water where her son had died of a broken heart. Her children say so, and the language is exact and deliberate. Her only unfulfilled wish was to know who had taken her eldest son from her and why. She died not knowing. Antonio died asking the same question. There is something that needs to be said about what the family has chosen to do with 50 years of unanswered questions, because it is not the only thing they could have chosen. They could have withdrawn. They could have decided at some point across those decades that the public exposure of the grief was costing more than it was producing. Nobody would have blamed them. The case was cold. The wall had held for 10 years, 20 years, 30, 40. A family choosing privacy over persistence would have been making a reasonable choice. They did not make that choice. They kept Enrico's name in the public record. They went back to Scotland Yard. They spoke to the Camden New Journal on the 40th anniversary, and that conversation restarted the cold case review. They matched the Metropolitan Police's reward from their own resources. For 50 years they had been the engine of this case's continued existence in the public conscience. Not the police, not the media, not the algorithm. It was the family. Iolanda said, "What you did didn't just end Enrico's life, it ended his entire family's lives." She was not speaking metaphorically. She was speaking with the precision of someone who has had 50 years to find the right words and has found them. The Lido is still there. It opens at 7 every day. In the winter, the committed come in the dark. In the summer, the pool fills and the sound of it carries across the heath. It has been open every summer since 1938. It was open the summer after Enrico died, and it has been open every summer since. Somewhere in that city, the people who were at Parliament Hill Lido on the 8th of July 1976 are living their lives. They are in their 60s and 70s. The wall that went up in summer 1976 is a wall that has been chosen every day. It is still standing. Enrico Sidoli has been dead for 49 years. His sisters are still here. His name is still in the public record because they put it there and keep it there and refused, across 5 decades, to let it become one of the cases that simply closed without resolution because nobody was left to insist that it hadn't. The case is open. The question is the same question it has always been. 1,000 people were at that pool on the 8th of July 1976, and one of them, or more than one, knows the answer.